Good evening. I want to welcome you to the forum for candidates running for the Legislative District 35A. This forum is sponsored by the Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids Area League of Women Voters, and I am Arlene Gillette, a member of the League, and I live in East Bethel. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization, 94 years strong. It does these things. It encourages the informed and active participation of all citizens in all levels of government. It works to increase understanding of major policy issues, and it influences public policy through education and advocacy. What the League does not do is the League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. Rather, the League provides voter education opportunities, such as this evening, to bring the candidates and their views to you, the voters. The views expressed here are those of the candidates and not of the League, and the sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement by the League of any candidate. If you're interested in joining the League, check out the League of Women Voters Minnesota website, lwvmn.org, for more information. And the League is open to membership by both men and women. All right. Now we will move to the forum for the candidates for House District 35A. The candidates are Peter Perovich and Abigail Whelan. And we will begin with a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate, starting with Peter Perovich.
Well, thank you, and thank all of you for coming tonight. I know we all have busy lives, and it's really great to see this many people show up. But I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on. I know you do this every election year, and it's I believe it's a very important forum for the voters to see, and it's something that is really just absolutely outstanding that you do this. A little bit about me. You know, I'm 52 years old. I grew up in Anoka, graduated from Anoka High School, and I'm married. I have 4 school-age children, and we live in Ramsey. You know, growing up in this town, I've seen a lot of changes over the years and learned a lot of things as time went. As a child growing up in this town, you know, we were taught a lot of things about community. My father, Elliot Perovich, and I know a lot of you know him, was an educator, administrator. He was mayor of this city, deeply involved with this community, with Boy Scouts. And those are the kinds of things that were in our household every day and when I was growing up. And these are the things that he was teaching us, is how important this community is and how important community is, period. Okay. You know, I'm running to fight for our families and our businesses. We need to make a stronger middle class. We suffered late in the 2000s, and we really need to move forward. We need to be more effective in addressing our inequities in this area. And I want to make sure that we're treated fairly here in Anoka and Ramsey. We've spent 2 decades, basically, as I put it, put on the back burner, and we haven't got the fair treatment out of St. Paul that I believe other communities have gotten, and I'm there to fight for that.
Okay, thank you. Now, Abigail Whelan, your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here tonight, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. As mentioned, my name is Abigail Whelan, and I'm looking to serve Anoka and Ramsey in the Minnesota House. Real briefly, just a little bit about me. I was raised in Anoka and graduated from Anoka High School. I then went to the University of Minnesota, where I studied political science and history with a minor in economics. I then worked at the Minnesota Senate, and that actually was a great experience, got to see a lot down there. Was offered a scholarship to go to the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, where I earned my master's in public policy. So I can tell you I love policy. I also really love this community. Having been born and raised here, our work ethic, our can-do attitude, our generosity just never cease to amaze me. As I've been out door knocking, people have offered me water and muffins, and it's just such a blessing to see the spirit of this community. I'm blessed to live here, and I really owe this community a lot. I also really believe that my generation needs representation in St. Paul. And the state just continues to spend more and more. We've had 15% increases in spending over the last biennium. If you look at the federal level, we're $17 trillion in debt. And my generation, the millennial generation, is going to be paying the bills for years to come. So I think we should have a seat at the table. I'm not saying the legislature should be only millennials, but we do need a mix. And we should be part of that mix. So we need to send people of every age group down to St. Paul because we all need a voice, and we're frustrated by the way government continues to increase taxes and spending in a way that's simply unsustainable. When I heard that Representative Abler was stepping down, I really felt in my heart that this was the right time for me to give back to the community that has given me so much and to be part of the team that will bring Minnesota into the future.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we will go to written questions from the audience with up to a 1-minute response from each candidate. The first question is, recently the media has expressed concerns about the high number of child protection allegations that counties did not investigate. Do you have any ideas on how the state can better protect children? And we will start with Abigail Whelan.
This is a really fantastic question. I know probably many of you in the room are familiar with the high-profile case of Eric Dean, which the question may be referencing, which is really tragic that this has happened, that child abuse has led to the death of a child. And the state should be doing everything in its power to avoid situations like that. I think what we can do as a state is work together, and I think this is definitely a bipartisan issue, work across the aisle to make sure that we have programs in place that will take care of situations like this and will actually go and investigate. I know the governor implemented an investigation into what happened, and we should definitely get to the bottom of it so we can avoid things like this ever happening again. I don't think anyone in the state, or even in Child Protective Services, no one wants this to happen. So working together, I think we can figure out ways to avoid it in the future.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Peter Perovich.
Well, it is. It's a very good question, and it's a very serious issue. And I believe that this is something that we have to have a discussion about, and I mean a real discussion. You know, we can't sit and talk with each other and then do nothing, which seems to be what happens with a lot of issues like this. I believe that issues like this and things like this, you know, can be helped and avoided with proper funding. I mean, over the years, especially the last 10 years, there's been nothing but cuts, cuts, cuts. And when you cut budgets, and you cut budgets to things like health and human services, social services, this is what happens. Now kids start slipping through the cracks. And troubled parents start slipping through the cracks because there's nobody there to help because there isn't the funds and resources. We have to fund these programs through the state. And this is only going to happen when legislators talk with each other and actually do something to get it done.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, now we'll go on to the next question, which is, what do you think you at the state level can do to help solve the Highway 10 problem? And we will start with Peter Parovich.
Well, obviously the Highway 10 has been a problem for, 30 years. I mean, I grew up and it still looks the same. And it's just something that is constantly talked about. I mean, finally we got some money last time, and they're starting up by Armstrong. But this is an issue that gets talked about every session with the legislators in this area, but yet nobody seems to want to stand up and figure out how to get the funding. It's great talk, but nobody wants to fund it. Or when it comes time to fund it, and when it comes time to ways to fund it, everybody backs down. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be that person that stands up and says, this is what we need to do. Let's work together. When we can work with all the legislatures in this community here and actually get something done and move this thing forward, because we deserve it. We deserve it here in Anoka and Ramsey.
Yes, okay, all right, thank you. Okay, Abigail Whelan, what do you think you at the state level could do to help solve the Highway 10 problem?
I think one of the most important things we need to do at the state level to solve not only the Highway 10 problem, but the road problem in general is prioritize. We need to be prioritizing roads and bridges. If you look at this past biennium, we have increased taxes 2.1 billion, we've increased spending 15%, and yet we can't fix Highway 10. Something is wrong. We need to prioritize. So, for example, if we look at just the money that they spent in the bonding bill on the legislative office building for politicians, $90 million went to that versus less than, I think it was 89.5 that went to roads and bridges. If we were to prioritize roads, we could have solved the Highway 10 problem long ago. And I know bonding doesn't necessarily go to all highways, but I would potentially be in support of a constitutional amendment that would allow bonding dollars to go to our highway system.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Now on to the next question, which is, Mnsure is about 1 year old. What do you feel is the most important thing that Mnsure has done for Minnesotans? And we will start with Abigail Whelan.
I don't think Mnsure has done anything very good for Minnesotans. In fact, right now, if you look at the amount of money that has been spent on Mnsure, we could have employed, 1,500 teachers in the school system. And if we look back further, Minnesota already had one of the best healthcare programs in the country. 91% of Minnesotans had healthcare. Of the remaining 9%, 2 to 3% of them didn't want it. 2 to 3% could have gotten it with one of our generous programs that we already had. And of those other 2 to 3%, we were working on it. We would have gotten there. And in fact, some of those 2 to 3% aren't even covered right now under Mnsure. So really, Mnsure, I think, has been a problem from the get-go, and we really need to start over, I think, from the ground up to fix this problem.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Peter Perovich, what would you say is the most important thing that Mnsure has done for Minnesotans?
Well, I think some of the most important things that Mnsure has done for Minnesota is we now have 95% of the people in this state have health insurance. I mean, and that's a great thing. And I think that's part of the goal, is to get people to have health insurance and pay for their health insurance. We're number 2 in the country. We have the lowest premiums in the country for health insurance. I've stated in the past, this Mnsure is a program that I don't believe that this is our final product. It does need some tweaking. I mean, it's not perfect. We're getting there, and it's done some great things up until this point. And I think it's going to do better things in the future. We just have to make sure that it does, and we have to work together. And that's what's important. If we don't work together to make it work, then yes, it can be a failure. But I don't believe it will be a failure.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next question, which is, how can we do a better job linking secondary trade schools to the job market? Okay, and we will start with Peter Parovich.
Well, this has been an issue for me for a long time. Going through school, through high school and seeing the industrial arts, as we called them at that time, and what the opportunities were for kids that were interested in those trades to get out. I mean, we have underfunded the tech schools horribly. It's like, there was a time they wanted to close the Anoka Tech School. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. Skilled labor is some of the most important labor we have in this country. And communities can't be strong without them. And it's that simple. We need to increase the funding for these tech schools and our community colleges. They are such an important part of it. These kids coming out of a big college now in huge debt, can't find a job, or a job that doesn't pay enough, when we have another option for them where they can make a good living, raise their family, and not have all that debt.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Abigail Whelan, how do you feel? How can we do a better job linking secondary trade schools to the job market?
I think one of the things that we can do would definitely be partnering with the job market to see what sorts of jobs and skills that they're in need of, and asking them, when you get new hirees that have graduated from these programs, what do you see is good? What skills are working that they've been trained with, and what isn't? How can we improve? And having that conversation and just bringing people to the table to have a conversation. And I may be for more funding, but I would want to see a cost-benefit analysis on that funding. I don't just want to give the tech school more money and not have them be accountable for it. What are they going to do with that money? How will we track the money that we give them to improve to improve outcomes, actually improve outcomes? Because if we just give them money, they can spend it on administrative costs, they can spend it on a variety of things. But if we want to really see a increase in our job market, we need to make sure that we have a solid plan in place. And so I think that starts by a conversation with the schools and the job market.
Okay, thank you. All right, now on to the next question. If elected to the legislature, what would be your first priority? And we will start with Abigail Whelan.
If elected to the legislature, my first priority for our community, for Anoka and Ramsey, would definitely be getting funding for Highway 10. We want to see that a freeway from Fair Oak and Anoka all the way through Armstrong and Ramsey. And we've thankfully gotten some of the funding already for the Armstrong interchange. But this issue has been a really problematic issue for many, many years. And as I'm out door knocking, folks are always saying that that's one of their top concerns. And so if we can work together with Northern Metro legislators and build a coalition and try and make sure that we can work together to get transportation dollars to be spent on our roads, bridges, and highways, I think that we will definitely see some more business being drawn to the area. We'll see growth in Ramsey and Anoka. And so that's why it would definitely be one of my number one priorities.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Peter Perovich, if elected to the legislature, what would be your first priority?
Well, I have to agree. I mean, our infrastructure is probably the number one priority. Roads lead to jobs. And when we have good infrastructure, that attracts businesses who hire the people in our community. Very much so, we have to have collaboration with our legislatures in this community. We've been talking about this for quite a few years. Again, you get a couple legislators that would like to do something and a couple that want to do something, but they don't want to fund it. We just can't have that anymore. Again, this type of legislation is something that I want to get elected to go down and stop, because this has become are we legislating for our parties, or are we legislating for our communities? And I'm going to legislate for the community. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay, thank you. Now the next question is, what changes, if any, would you suggest to how the legacy amendment dollars are allocated? And we will start with Peter Parovich on that.
Well, I believe the legacy amendment dollars, I think there should be some changes. I think that they're doing a pretty good job with the way that the money is getting spent. Though I would like to see a little bit more money go toward stuff like invasive species, improving shorelines, improving, that kind of thing with our rivers and lakes. But I think up till now, and I paid a lot of attention to this. This is kind of something that's very near and dear to me, is the way that these dollars are spent. And I think that the council now is doing a pretty good job with the monies that they have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Okay, Abigail Whelan, what changes, if any, would you suggest in how the legacy amendment funds are allocated?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I would have to do a little bit more research, I think, to be sure on exactly what changes might be needed. I think my opponent here made a good point that a lot of what's being done right now is they're being spent well, and maybe we could see more money being spent on the environment. I definitely think that as Minnesotans, we are really, really proud of our lakes, our water, we love to hunt, we love to fish here. So whatever is being done with legacy dollars to support that, I probably would support maybe an increase in that. But again, I would have to take a look at it, and I'm happy to do that. So whoever asked that question, if you want to call or email me anytime, I'd be happy to chat with you more about it as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have time for one last question. And that is, should there be a limit to the number of terms that a legislator can serve? And we'll start with Abigail Whelan.
I think that question is tough to answer because how many terms would it be for which offices? If we're talking about legislative offices, 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. I know that, our nation's founders didn't really think of politicians as being career politicians that we have today. So I would be open to looking at a proposal, but again, it would definitely depend on the specifics of the proposal and how many terms, et cetera. So not a terrible idea, but again, I'd want to see specifics.
Okay, all right, thank you. Peter Perovich, should there be a limit to the number of terms that a legislator can serve?
It's a good question, and I know that it's discussed a lot, even outside the political arena and amongst voters and citizens. I think I haven't completely made my mind up on that. I mean, you can look at it a couple of different ways. You can look at it as we do have term limits now with elections, but it's up to the voters to make those term limits hit. And part of me thinks that maybe it is a good idea that we have term limits. And how those are implemented and, how we go about doing that with what offices is another discussion that we need to have. But it's something that I wouldn't be opposed to looking into.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we will have a 1-minute closing statement from each candidate, and we will start with Abigail Whelan.
Well, thank you, and thank you again for being here tonight. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to speak before you all on these important issues. I'm running because I think it's time for the bill payers to stand up and have a say in the political process. I hear how frustrated people are with government and how they don't feel that they have a voice, and I know with one-party control, many feel that their voice has been silenced. As a millennial, I can tell you I have felt that way. My generation has a huge mess on our hands, and yet as I'm out knocking on doors, I realize that not only does my generation need a voice, but so does the person sitting in traffic twice as long as they need to be. So does the mom who just wants her kids to have a great education. And so does the small business owner who's struggling to make ends meet. So I can promise you I will be a voice for all of us, and that I will work hard for you and with you on issues that are important to you because they're important to me as well. I hope to earn your support here tonight, and I encourage you to vote Whelan on November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Peter Perovich, your 1-minute closing statement.
Well, thank you, and again, thanks everybody for coming and the League of Women Voters for putting this on. This is a fantastic venue. I look at what has happened in the last year and a half, or the last 2 sessions, and what's been accomplished, and quite frankly, what the DFL has accomplished. We turned a $6 billion budget deficit into a $1.2 billion surplus. We have all-day, everyday kindergarten, which is extremely important because we need to invest in our kids, and we need to invest in them at an early age. And that's something I will continue to advocate for. We have tuition freezes, funding increases for higher education. We have the Safe and Supportive School Acts. We raised the minimum wage for 325,000 of the lowest income earners. And that pumps over $500 million into the economy just by doing that alone. Those are the good things that we have done. And I need your support November 4th. Vote for Peter Parovich. I want to continue moving this state forward in a progressive way. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, again, I would like to remind you that the views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters, and sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement by the League of any candidate. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, ABC, I want to thank you all for coming, and for the TV audience for watching, and thank you, the candidates, for being willing to serve the community in the democratic process by running for office. This concludes the District 35 Forum, and you may applaud now. So thank you again, and remember to vote Tuesday, November 4th, 2014, okay?